Hello! Here's a question for you. How lightfast are Derwent Lightfast pencils? Let's find out in this video. At the start of recording this, it is currently the 11th of August 2021. There are 100 Derwent Lightfast pencils and I have them in two sets here. I've got the 72 set and then I also have the extra 28 just in this 10, but it's not full. I'm looking at Derwent's website and they say, now with 100 colours available, Derwent Lightfast pencils are our first oil-based coloured pencil, formulated to be 100% lightfast according to the ASTM 6901 standard, rating lightfast 1 or 2, so the colours won't fade for up to 100 years under museum conditions. We're not going to be in museum conditions here, but I thought I might do my own home test and see if the 100 pencils are actually all lightfast. And I'm going to do this with 3 different charts. I'll just get those ready for you. So I printed out 3 charts just on plain printer paper, and I have done an A3 size to make the charts bigger so I can do larger swatches. Instead of just doing 2, I've thought to do 3. I'm going to stick this in a window that gets quite a lot of sun at my house. I live in Melbourne, Australia. We get a lot of sun during the summer. Currently in August it's the tail end of winter and we're going to be heading into spring and summer, so these are going to be hanging all through summer. That's my plan anyway. The idea is to gain as much UV sunlight as possible on this one. It's a little bit unrealistic because who hangs their paintings in the sun all of the time? But I thought I would go the most extreme one that I can, and then the second one I'm going to hang just on a wall in my studio probably, so it's gaining ambient light but maybe not necessarily direct sunlight. So it's just what you would have in your household on a wall. And then the third one I'm going to put in one of my folios, so it's basically going to stay in the dark permanently the whole time, 24/7, not really being exposed to any light at all. And this should give us a really good idea as to if any of them are going to change just with regular ambient light indoors and also in direct sunlight as well. It is now the 16th of August and it took me that long to colour in all 3 of these humongous charts. Oh my lord, it was such a long process, but I got all 3 coloured out. I sat in front of the TV doing these and they're all as identical as I can make them. Each one more identical than the last. I did think about colouring a gradient from light to dark, but then I realised that really when I do colouring especially, I am going to cover everything with as many layers as I can. So it seems more logical to me that I would put down a thicker layer of pencil to see how they hold up, because that's how I'm going to do my artworks anyway. I have not put any solvents on these. I'm not really going to test them with solvents. I did think about doing that, but I think I'm just going to test the pencils in their natural state. So I have one of these black art folio bags and I'm going to slot one of them into here. So as you can see, that's very dark in there. That's not going to get any light on it whatsoever. And that will keep it from getting bent and rumpled as well. So there's my full dark one, all safely hidden away. Here's the one that's an ambient light. This is in my studio on the wardrobe door. And if I pan around, there's the window, and the full sunlight one is in my little kitchenette of the studio. You can see that's stuck up on the window there. I also have another one that's being tested, which you'll see in a future video hopefully. And I'm just looking at how dirty that window is, so I might need to go outside and actually wash that window. Oops! It's got a bit grubby over the winter, just looking at that. We've had some really windy days and I think it's just been raining against the window, and yes, it looks pretty filthy. Right there is where the sun is. So the sun travels across this way from the morning into early afternoon, so it's getting a lot of direct sunlight here. Let's wait and see what happens in another year or so. It's now August 2022, a full year since I stuck this up in the window, so I think it's time to pull it down and check it out. It's looking pretty good just from here, but I'm really curious just to put them side by side to see if there has been any fading with this one in the window compared to the other two swatches that I've done. So let me get everything together and we'll have a closer look. So here's the first one. This has been in the dark for an entire year in my folio. It's the first time it's seeing the light of day in all of that time, and I'm assuming, without having coloured them out again, that these colours have stayed the same. I'm hoping they have. Let's take a look at the ambient light. That's the one that was hanging on my wardrobe door, getting some daylight but no direct sunlight. So as far as I can tell, there is no difference between them. It's really hard to see because there's a lot of colours here. I've got to show you the one that's in the light because it's just amazing. This is the one that's been in the sunlight here. It is almost exactly the same as the one that's been in the dark. I am just astounded at how well these have held up. They did say that they are lightfast pencils, so you do expect them to remain lightfast, but quite often that's not the case, and these have exceeded my expectations. I'm going to try and take a closer look at some of them. There are a few little changes in a couple of the colours, but it's quite minimal. We need to get in a bit closer, I think. This is editing Becky interrupting my own video. I've seen a couple of errors which I only noticed while I was editing, so I just want to mention a couple of things really quickly. One of them is this Merlot. For some reason I have not coloured these two ones with the right colour, but I have on this one. This is the ambient light, and then the other two are the dark and the light ones. I don't know how I've done that. We're just going to have to skip past it because there's nothing I can do about it now, but yes, there is a glaring error on these three here. And the other thing I want to mention is, bearing in mind, when Derwent talk about their lightfast, they are talking about museum conditions, and so I would say that the ambient light chart that I have done here is the closest to museum conditions, where you're getting a constant light and it's not direct sunlight or anything like that. The full sunlight is extreme, and so when there are a few changes in this one, that's not really indicative of the pencils not being lightfast. We have to go off the ambient light one, which is far more what they're trying to show, that you can have a painting hanging for 100 years in regular daylight without nasty sunlight hitting it, and it will last for that time without the colours fading or changing. So in this case, the ambient light one has not changed at all that I can see, and so I would definitely say that they are lightfast. Alright, back to everything else that I have recorded. So I'll move down a bit and we can see groups of colours a little more closely. This is no sun and full sun. Obviously the hardest ones to see are these really pale ones, but it looks like Champagne's held up. It may be just a tiniest bit lighter than the one that's been in no sun, but I think I'm still seeing some colour on there. It hasn't completely disappeared or anything like that. I think the yellows have held up very well. I'm not seeing any difference between any of those colours. Let me know if you can see a difference. It's also quite hard on camera compared with what I'm seeing with my naked eye, but I really am not seeing any difference in this lot of colours up here. So next we have some pinky purple ones, and this is where you expect colours to fade in this spectrum especially. But let's move down and take a closer look. So these light pinky cinnamon salmon colours have held up okay. The oyster's still there, I can see that. Ignore that slight little mark, that's because I nearly put magenta there. The only one that I see which has changed a tiny bit is that Bordeaux colour. It looks just a little bit faded on this one. This is the colour I'm looking at here. I'll try and hold them up so you can see that. It's not a lot, but it does look like it's just a tiny bit different from the one that's been in the dark on the left hand side. The heather and wild lavender have held up amazingly well too. I'm not seeing any difference or any change between those. Magenta might have faded just a little bit on that sunlight one. It's not a significant amount, but it is just slightly there. So I imagine if I left this in the sun for 5 years, it probably will fade eventually. By comparison, here's the one that's in ambient light, which is just regular daylight. And this looks the same, the magenta and Bordeaux, as the ones in the dark. So regular daylight doesn't seem to be affecting them. It's just when they've been in that direct sunlight for a whole year, pretty much. But otherwise, these look like they're unchanged to me. And then going into the deep purples and blues, I'm not really seeing any change. They possibly faded just the tiniest little bit, but it's also been cooking in that sunlight. And we've had some really bright sunny days, so it's not that much of a difference, just a slight bit of maybe luster lacking in this one compared to the one that's been in the dark. The Arctic, I think it's still there. This one possibly has faded a bit. It kind of looks like it has on the camera more than in real life, so I think this Arctic blue is almost white. So it's possible that this really light pigment has faded somewhat out of here. Let me hold it up and we'll see. Tell me what you think. Does that one look like it's faded? It really does look like it on the camera more so than what I can see with my naked eye. So I'll move on from that one. All of the cyan and turquoisey colours look like they have held up really well. And now I'll move on to the next column. Yeah, all of the greens are looking really good. Green earth is possibly a little bit lighter. That is the only one I'm really seeing any difference in, and it's very minimal. I don't think I'm seeing anything else. I'm happy the wheat's held up. That one seems to be exactly the same when I'm just looking at it here. And down the bottom, going into the earth tones, these are pretty much all fine. I would expect these to be the most lightfast because that's just the way of natural earthy pigments. But overall, I am very impressed with this. Derwent has done an amazing job at making all of these colours lightfast, with possible exception of the Arctic, and maybe that Bordeaux is a bit dodgy. Bordeaux is one of those colours that is just notorious for being fugitive, but they've done very well to get it as lightfast as possible. And now I've pulled the pencil out, it is considered a lightfast 2, so it's not the most lightfast. Lightfast 1 is the most lightfast, so this one is considered to be slightly less lightfast, and that has shown in my little test. There are a few others which are lightfast too. I think I might actually quickly go through because I realise I haven't done that. So I'll go through and label the ones that are lightfast too, and we'll see if they are the ones that I've actually picked out as looking like they've changed a little bit. Here we go, I've labelled all the LF2s. It's no surprise that most of them are on this left-hand side because brighter colours do tend to be slightly less lightfast, and there are a few in the earthy tones which are lightfast too as well. Bordeaux is definitely LF2, as is the magenta and the deep rose and purple. Amazingly enough, these yellow ones, a lot of those are LF2, but they held up really well in this test. Interestingly enough, Arctic is considered LF1, the most lightfast, but it's very hard, as I said, to tell if that one's changed, so I don't know, I'll just have to let that one slide. So to answer that question of are lightfast pencils actually lightfast, I can conclude that yes, indeed they are, and that's great news. I am confident enough to use all of these pencils except possibly that Bordeaux, but really when it comes to it being just on the wall, not in direct sunlight, it hasn't changed at all. Neither has that magenta or any of the other colours that I thought were slightly dodgy on the full sun one, so I'm going to give that a little pass. I think that these are all perfectly fine to use. You can use your own judgment, of course, as to which pencils you might want to leave out. So yes, these lightfast pencils are pretty expensive, but if you're a professional artist who doesn't want their work to fade, especially if you're selling it to someone, then they are worth the money, and I think the colours that they have in them are really lovely. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been really illuminating, and if you've been on the fence as to whether these pencils are actually as advertised, I can say that yeah, they pretty much are, and I would be very confident using them. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up because it really helps me out, and don't forget to click the subscribe button as well, and I will see you all again really soon in my next video. Swatch you later. Bye!